Can you feel it, hear it, see it today? If you can't, then it doesn't matter anyway. You will never understand because it happens too fast and it feels so good. It's like walking on glass. Now, why am I quoting Faith No More's 1990 classic, Epic? Because 2024 is going to be an epic year. I'm Gavin Dunaway, Product Marketing Lead for the Media Trust, and with the help of my colleagues, I'm going to walk you through 7 major digital trust and safety trends that will help you navigate the rocky year ahead. We are sitting at the intersection of 4 major developments: the proliferation of generative AI, the depreciation of third-party cookies in the advertising environment, growing public rancor over online threats and objectionable ad content, and the 2024 US general election. If we all survive, what tales we will have to tell. These are going to coalesce into 7 major digital trust and safety trends that Corey, Pat, and I are going to dive into. And we also have a report that we'll send you later where you'll see even more details, graphs, charts, all kinds of amazing stuff. But before I go into introducing my fine colleagues, just some housekeeping. Yes, please put some questions in the Q&A box. We'll take them at the end of the webinar. Also, at the end of the after the webinar, we will send you a note with a copy of the video and a copy of our CYA 2024 report. What is CYA? Cover your assets. Now, on to the 3 musketeers or the 3 amigos, which you guys prefer? If we're the 3 amigos, does that mean I'm Chevy Chase? I'd rather be Steve Martin. Oh, all right, we'll see about that. But I love you guys so much. It's always a pleasure to do these webinars, even when we talk about really sad, risky things. But Pat, you're incredibly knowledgeable about digital threats. You're widely respected as a leader in malware identification, threat trends. You're like the malware whisperer. Could you tell the audience a bit about how your team operates and what's critical in finding and shutting down attacks?
Yeah, I can talk about that. So first is it's definitely hard. The bad guys, they're relentless. You know, they're continuously evolving. They're trying new tactics coming through different channels. And as an industry, I think we all just need to work better together. We need to think bigger and make sure we're attacking the problem where it's originating, going after the buyers, getting these shut down to deal the most impact is going to be essential. Playing the game of whack-a-mole with shutting campaigns off one by one is a losing trend and a losing battle for everybody.
Totally. Now going into 2024, I mean, how do you think threat actors' strategies and tactics have changed? It really does kind of morph, almost seasonally, right?
Yeah, it's definitely a seasonal trend that we see, but one of the main things that has been ongoing is the smash and grab style tactics. People are launching these attacks very rapidly, very quickly, do as much damage as possible, as fast as possible, trying to prevent themselves from, getting shut down. But as soon as they do, that's when they just jump ship, move to the next spot, and rinse and repeat.
Now, Corey, you are also very well respected in digital media and advertising. What does being the head of global marketplace innovation entail? Where are you focused right now?
It's a good question. I mean, on a lot of things, but basically in the intersection between product and business, or product and the ecosystem, making sure that we're, as an organization, keeping up with the trends, staying on the bleeding edge of quality solutions, understanding what our clients need and making sure that that's a part of our product. So always have my ear to the ground, always in a lot of calls with a lot of people much smarter than me. So I'm happy to be involved in that and try to find ways to continue to innovate within the quality and safety spectrums.
And we really appreciate you doing that. What consumer digital trust and safety trend isn't getting enough attention right now, in your opinion?
I think it's CTV, like streaming connected TV. I think we're sort of past the streaming wars. We're in, I would call it like a streaming cold wars now. There's more streaming platforms than ever before. There's more ad supported models. That means there's more ads, and that also means that sometimes the price of those ads are decreasing. The access to get into those platforms is increasing. So the quality concerns within that world will kind of continue to grow. I think we're past the idea of everything is this super premium, super high CPM. There's lots of ad space to fill there now. And just like the open web, that I think, the more opportunity, the more porousness, the more chance for risk.
Totally, totally. Especially, I think, on the content front. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think especially, and I know we're going to talk about this a bit today, but as more and more budgets, shift from linear over, and this election this year, there's a lot of content that's coming through CTV that kind of skirts this line that it might have not gotten away with in television, might have been okay on your computer. So now you have both. You have this kind of world of you never really know what's gonna come through. On a content side, it can be a lot more obviously targeted. It doesn't have the same regulations as linear television or broadcast, and so I think your risk there, although a consumer feels it the same way, they're watching on their TV, it should be just like television commercials. I don't think that's the case. I think we've seen that to be not true, and I think we're going to continue to see a lot of that in 2024.
Well said, and that is a really good segue into our first trend, the political rush. $16 billion. That's what Group M says is going to go into political advertising during the 2024 general election cycle. It's a wonderful amount of money for digital media after a few, let's be pretty honest, kind of tough years, lots of layoffs, consolidation in the publishing space. But there is a ton of risk associated with that spend. You've got potentially objectionable, inflammatory content around sensitive subject matter, abortion, gun control, immigration. You've got potential regulatory issues. And then, yes, AI-generated content and deepfakes, the Argentinian presidential elections, AI-generated content and ads were all over the place. And we just saw the big issue with Rishi Sunak, Prime Minister of UK, being used, his image and manipulated video used to do scams. So these are all big dangers going into the 2024 election. Corey, you've been helping ad tech platforms wade this space for years, several election cycles now. How have they evolved their approach to this lucrative but really risky space?
Yeah, I mean, I think because there's so much money in it, like it's definitely something that everybody kind of wants a part of. But as there's more money and more focus in it, there's more regulations coming. I think there's more proposed to that regulation. I think, this year there's already more concerns than there was in 2020 about, especially at the state level, right? How these things are being approached by different states. Different states have different laws around what needs to be disclosed, what needs to be reported. I think the way that we handle this election is going to directly impact programmatic and digital in the future because there is so much money in it now. Now we have that attention, and I think when we have that attention, it's just a matter of time before we regulate. And I think we kind of got in trouble in as an industry with how we handled privacy, and really needed to walk that back. I think we, you kind of said we could self-police, and I think a lot of people disagreed once the light was shone into that part of the world. And I think we could run into these same challenges here if we're not responsible. I think a lot of candidates will have something in their platforms about how they approach big tech, about how they approach misinformation, disinformation, these kind of things. And the more responsible we are with this election is definitely going to impact how we can self-regulate and how we can continue down that path for the next one. If we totally screw that up, I mean, I think we're going to see it on the back end. A lot of things that are changing the way we do it, just kind of like privacy. I think ad content, particularly in the political sector, being sensitive and impacting democracy directly, will be under scrutiny. And kind of the results of this year and what we end up doing and all the reports that come out next year about what we did or didn't do, I think are very much going to impact us going forward.
Okay, so do you have like some advice for pubs and platforms? They want the spend, but they don't want the risk. What can they do?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to, have, and I've said this on, previous talks, and it's kind of something I harp on all the time, but you have to have a process in place, right? You have to have a policy in place. You have to understand like what it is you do allow, what it is you don't. You have to align that with, your corporate values. You have to align that with your audience's values. And then you need a process to actually be able to do something. I think just like taking it and saying like, oh, we'll see what happens and we'll deal with it is probably the worst way to do it. I think, setting up and saying, these are the kind of things we allow, this is our process, and we're reviewing everything, and then actually doing that I think is going to be the best way forward. And it's like, wow, that's a lot. That's cumbersome. You know, that can be expensive. It can be, but there's a lot of money on the table to be had if it's done right. And so I think it's like, you know, not just kind of seeing what comes, but understanding this is coming. There's just a lot of opportunity there, a lot of money there. What kind of, you know, policies do we want to put in place as an organization? What kind of rules do we have to follow in the industry or the, you know, the country? And are we actually having a review process that lets us verify everything here and make sure that it is following those policies and that we're not, you know, serving things we shouldn't be and getting in trouble both from our consumers and for our democracy and also for our companies and our brands.
Very well said. Now let's move on to our next trend, mobile app dangers. You know, mobile apps have always been a strange space. Because I'm old, I was a journalist in digital advertising and remember when in-app ads first started appearing. And I also remember the infamous launch of Apple's iAd, where Steve Jobs said, mobile ads suck, and promised a future of direct sold, beautiful and safe ads. Well, yeah, kind of didn't turn out that way. Mobile app monetization is dominated by programmatic and ad networks, and it opens up all kinds of opportunities for attacks, but also unsavory / unwanted content. Data AI says consumers spend 5 hours a day on their phones, 90% in apps, and many of those are ad supported. So, Pat, why is mobile app maps more or less risky / dangerous for consumers than other environments?
So great question. I would say it's mainly because there's less attention being paid there. So we still see the malware coming through the apps. It's still identified in almost every day that we're scanning different apps. And it's a different trend and a different type of malware, obviously, than mobile browsing. But bad things are still occurring on a daily basis. They're going to continue to occur. And one thing that I think is of note is when you're inside of an app, there's far more hyper-targeting availability. You can go after very specific individuals, very specific device IDs. So the more sophisticated actors are most likely going to go that avenue to make sure they're hyper-targeting the right people and only delivering malware when the proper device is met.
That's tough, and we've definitely seen on the web how great, for lack of a better term, threat actors are taking advantage of all these. Now, what about the kind of fragmentation of the space? I mean, you've got tons of like small, you know, one-man shop developers just putting out ad-supported games. I mean, does that create more opportunities for threat actors?
I would say it creates more opportunities simply because these smaller app developers aren't going to pay nearly as much attention as to what's coming through. They're simply maintaining, are we delivering ads? Are we still getting paid? Am I making a, you know, positive net revenue? So having that availability there for bad actors to sneak in their content at potentially a lower price point is definitely something they're going to take advantage of.
So there's also a lot of questionable content on mobile apps when it comes to advertising, particularly advertising adult games and chat apps. Recently, we ran into a ton of just all-out misogynistic game ads that were suggesting violence toward women. Corey, what's key for developers and platforms that monetize the space to avoid ad content that might offend users and get apps deleted?
I mean, I think the mobile space has definitely got some of the seediest stuff that we see in the ecosystem. Yeah, but I think it's very similar to, you know, that comment about CTV and about political is really understanding everything that's coming through, and having those policies. You know, you're not going to have that same major nationwide commercial or political thing there. You might have very targeted games and apps and sites that are for a certain part of the internet that could be a little bit more targeted or risky than you think. And I think understanding all the stuff that comes through, again, going back to having policies in place, different policies, right? Not necessarily the same policies as you'd have in making sure you're following state political rules, but policies about what kind of apps do we run, what kind of things are we okay with, are we crossing that boundary, and really being able to know everything that's serving through there and set up those policies so that you can flag that kind of content and make sure it aligns with your audience, aligns with your users, aligns with your brand.
Well said. So let's move on. This one is personal for me. I have a 5-year-old daughter, and I'm really nervous about when she will dive into the internet by herself. I mean, in tracking malware targeting kids, the majority of it is this attack that we call phony fetcher, and that is all about and that is really about, PDF compilers, other ad-supported like utility apps, that and browser plugins, and these things open the door to more attacks, more malware, unwanted content. It's really bad stuff. Pat, why is this such a popular tactic when targeting minors? What is it that makes it so effective?
So I would say it's a combination of a couple of things. Obviously, the younger generations have been growing up with these devices. They're used to this content. They're used to be presented with different advertisements that, they don't really think twice about. They see an ad, they're going to click on it because they want this new game or this new download for a game they already have. What they don't really pay attention to is when they click on it, it's taking them to an untrusted third party. They're downloading something that is completely open to any sort of vulnerability. So it's definitely an easier way for malicious actors to make their way onto a device. And we all know that most of these kids don't have their own iTunes accounts and their own items. So as soon as they get on that device, they are now linked to mom or dad, and they're able to extract their information. And so it doesn't really matter who's going to download it, but it's very apparent that the younger generation is just so accustomed to it. They're ready to download something to enhance their day-to-day experience on their tablet.
Oh, geez, that's really disheartening. This idea that the kids are seen as a vulnerable thing to attack a family. That's wow. Well, another group that is seriously under threat is seniors. Another one that hits personal for me. I have older parents, and I'm disturbed, but this is not something new. I mean, I remember my dad talking with my grandma about guys literally going door to door, pushing scams. My other grandmother almost got taken in by a bogus reverse mortgage scheme. Guy just walking to her door. But now they can do it online, and they can scale. It's more efficient, and it's anonymous. Dolos, which is the creative you're seeing there, our name malware, just was everywhere this year. So omnipresent that it actually made national news. But Pat, we saw it slow down in the summer. What happened?
So I think it had a lot to do with just the press being out there. A lot of people in the security
Oh,
industry were actually talking about this threat, showing examples, explaining what it's doing, how it's operating, and where it's coming from. So I think getting all of that attention kind of slowed their roll, but by no means is this a diminished attack pattern. It will come back, it will resurge, and it's just a matter of time.
totally. So, but why is it so effective, Pat? I mean, kind of like phony fetcher. Why does it work so well on seniors?
So I think it has a lot to do with the fear tactic. Most most individuals, especially if it comes through with like a browser locker, if that individual gets this prompt that says, "This is Microsoft telling you you have an issue," they can't click on anything, they can't close out of it, they can't do anything. That's when they get, quick scared. They don't know what to do, so they call the number that's presented to them, and that's where the real bad actions begin.
Yeah, it's almost the opposite social engineering tactic for kids. Kids are going to click on anything and everything, and they're used to it. And then seniors are maybe a little bit more hesitant to click anything at all. I mean, ends up being a backdoor is a backdoor at the end of the day, anyways. But kind of both ends of the spectrum on a good phishing attack with some social engineering.
Crazy. So let's talk about something. Yeah, AI. I was at CES. Everything has AI now. I'm kind of interested in a concept that Corey introduced me to. What is your P-doom number? This is the probability that your tech will cause doom. Personally, I think the media trust, we're in the negatives. We're trying to maybe counteract all the other stuff out there. How about you, Corey? What are you at?
I mean, I think I'll align with Kevin Roos of the New York Times at 5%. I think it's a 1 in 20 chance. I think we have an opportunity to make sure that we're keeping an eye on this, even the fact that we have that measure and it's somehow a dinner party conversation is something that means we're paying attention to it. And I think that's a lot of like what we're focused on in AI is like, there's a lot of ways this can be used for good and, generate a lot of really cool creative. There's a lot of ways that can be used nefariously as well.
And we are already seeing the ways it can be used nefariously in digital advertising, malware. There's lots of fear about AI replacing jobs, but it's really already causing consumer harm, both code and content. Let's start with creative issues. At our DTS Summit in New York back in December, Corey, you had a great conversation about AI. And what were the highlights?
Yeah, we had a great group there, a lot of good input. I think, the biggest concern is I think the scale, like the influx of creative that could have, where something that would have been a campaign that had 60 creatives can very easily have 6,000. And then how do you handle that? How do you check through them? How do you make them change? I think that was one of them. I think how, they're used for more things with more negative connotations like deepfakes and that kind of stuff is a problem. I think there's also a heavy dose of skepticism in that group, which I thought was a good thing because although we think all these things can happen, I think everybody's like, are we really seeing it yet though? And just like a lot of things that we do in digital, I think we could be pontificating in a space where we haven't, seen that be a problem. There's definitely a real risk. I think we're keeping an eye on it. There's a lot of things that we're doing at the Media Trust to be able to detect these types of things in creative content. Was it generated by that? And by tools that make, AI deepfakes and AI generated content in general. But I don't know that we've seen this like explosion of it yet, but that's definitely the fear.
And we've definitely never gotten in ad tech. We've never gotten caught up in hype, have we?
Not once.
Pat, scale is also a huge concern with malware. You spoke at length at the DTS Summit as well about the AI effect on digital threats. What are your biggest concerns?
So it's mainly around the fact that the bad actors will be able to basically have somebody else rewrite their code in a different fashion, make it so no longer detected by the standard IOCs that were previously utilized. But one of the big concerns from the group was they're going to now build multiple landing locations, build brand new websites at a rapid pace. They're going to be able to, do this at scale without any effort. And it is an unfortunate reality that the ability to create these websites and create these malicious destinations are going to be that much easier. But I think the main problem will be around, we just have to identify the campaigns that are leading to them. Once we get those campaigns and buyers terminated, doesn't matter how many landing pages there are, it won't be running.
So what's key to making that happen? The best approach defense to threat actors using AI?
I would say you got to fight AI with AI. The more machine learning, the more processes you have in place on the security front, you will be able to identify these threats easier and quicker. And as the models learn, obviously, you'll get better and better at identification of them.
What about for actually like kind of identifying them? I mean, how do you fight that scale, Corey?
I mean, I don't really know if you can fight it. I think it really just drives home that like you can't take like a sample-based approach to looking for these things, right? It's not statistically relevant in malware and bad content to scan 1% of ads and expect that that's what your ecosystem looks like. I think you have to scan everything. You have to know everything. You have to put all the creative through the rigor, because it'll with that scale, stuff's bound to slip through. And I think you got to keep an eye on it, and you can't just peek here and there.
Sample-based approach does not work. So I know we're probably going to run a little past, but thank you guys for sticking around. We'll try to get through these next ones pretty quickly. FizzCorp. We're already seeing AI in this fake celebrity endorsed ads. There were the Taylor Swift ads for the cookware that featured an AI creation of her voice. FizzCorp, it's appearing. It uses cloaking to hide crypto scams, but FizzCorp changed in this year. Hey, well, what happened, Pat?
So as they're evolving, it's kind of like Dolos. The same attacks kind of get old, people get wise to it, so they have to continue to innovate. One of the things we've seen is the final click-through destinations are going to lead to different type of scam. So it's not always going to be invest in this, give me money for that. It's going to be buy this miracle product. And that's one of the tactics that these guys are trying to utilize to make sure they can still continue to deliver their attacks without getting identified and shut down as quickly.
And now let's lead to the one that I really wish was not a trend. Ghost Cat. This was a trend in CYA 2022. It was a trend in CYA 2023. I got a bad feeling it will be a trend in CYA 2025. The number of unique attacks grew 3x in 2023, 3 times as many as in 2022. In fact, we just saw a big outbreak last week and still one going on. So to Pat, how has it evolved, and how has it just maintained such a massive presence over all this time?
So there's a couple different tactics that they're using. Obviously, when they first came out, it was very targeted. You had to be on a mobile device, and it had to basically run its malicious actions there. As they progressed, they moved into desktop. Now they are also expanding into video advertising. This obviously begs the question where they have far more money, they're getting well funded, they're becoming far reaching throughout the ecosystem to deliver their attacks from many different angles.
Do you think we're going to see it on the CYA 2025 list as well?
Oh yeah, I don't think these people are going away anytime soon. They continue to change their tactics, more do what they do, and unfortunately, they're continuing to be successful at it. So it's basically, it comes down to, we as an industry have to work better. We have to start communicating to the right people, making it sure that the DSPs involved know who these buyers are, get them removed from the platform, reach out to the different hosting providers that are actually delivering the malicious content. If we can terminate it there, that's also going to, disrupt the attack and make it so it'll have far less impact. But ensuring we have those proper communication channels between all the different parties to do as much damage and disruption as possible is going to be key.
That's a very good point, because these malicious payloads are coming from somewhere. They're from content delivery networks, from e-commerce platforms, cloud storage, and it kind of goes outside of ad tech. So yeah, I think we really do have to expand our view outside the space and get them the data that they need. So we've gone a bit over, but let's have some closing thoughts. What else should the people on this webinar be thinking about going into as we travel through 2024? Pat, I'll start with you.
So there's a couple different things. One of the primary ones is going to be just making sure you know what's going on in your ecosystem. Lots of people are taking advantage of the different fingerprinting models to make sure they're targeting the right individuals. They're embedding extra code behind those fingerprinting files so that they can basically impact as many people as possible, and making sure you know what's taking place in your environment to mitigate these threats. And when these files actually load something extra, you're made aware of it and identify basically how to take action upon it. So knowing what's going on and knowing who to contact, the proper communication channels, as I was saying, is going to be key in basically how do we combat this going forward. Shutting down campaigns one by one, it's just a waste of everybody's time. We got to think bigger. We got to get in touch with the right people to make sure it's all shut down properly.
Think big in 2024. I think that's something we can all get behind. Corey, what's on your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think thinking big is, part of the growth of ad tech. I mean, I guess the maturation of programmatic and how we're kind of past our adolescence phase. We're kind of like, as an industry, as technologies, we're young adults, which means, we're more responsible, or we have to be more responsible now, just like a young adult. I mean, we can now start to get tried as an adult. We have more responsibilities. I think we've gone from an era where, consumers and regulators and looked at us and at first was like, didn't even know, Facebook ran ads, and it was like, okay, we understand that ads exist and these are a part of the mobile of the web. And then it became, oh, and these ads kind of track me, and it's a privacy concern. And I think that's something that really kind of woke us up and matured us. And now I think there's a lot of attention on what the ads actually say. And I think in particular fueled by, things like misinformation and disinformation in politics. But looking at the content of that, I think the scrutiny on things like YouTube and platforms about their ad content, which is probably cleaner and safer than it ever has been in the history of YouTube. But now people are looking, right? Now people are watching, and now people are doing that. So I think as we evolve as an ecosystem, I think we're now going on to our young adult phases, which means sometimes we still do some stupid things, but for the most part, we have to be more responsible, because a lot more eyes are on things in ads, and the ad content is going to be way more heavy under scrutiny than it has been in the past. It's not going to be a floating monkey that if you click on and shoot down, you win an iPad. It's definitely, I don't know if that dates me seeing those ads from back in the day, but I think it's evolved quite a bit, right? And so there's a lot of attention on what actually runs.
Are you telling me we've gotten past banner blindness? People are actually paying attention to digital ads?
I don't know about that, but I mean, at least, there's more places to see them. There's more talk about them. And I think that content is now becoming, to the forefront. It's not about these things are tracking you. It's these ads contain this content that is a scam, or that is, tricking people or getting people to do lean one way politically or the other. And I think they're being held more responsible for that, as opposed to just like, wow, this is creepy. I think now it's like, is there damage that content, that those messages can do to audiences? And I think we're going to have to keep an eye on that.
Well said. I just want to close off my thoughts by kind of jumping on what Pat was saying. I was the Ad Monsters editorial director for a long time, and when I worked with pubs, and I knew the media trust long before I joined the company. And more than a decade ago, I was really just struck by how publishers were always left holding the bag when it came to malware outbreaks and digital threats. And I long advocated for the fight to move up the chain to SSPs and DSPs. And as those companies took more responsibility in this, I was very hardened. But we got to keep moving up, and we got to keep moving up the chain, but also over. We got to get these companies on the periphery, the cloud storage, the CDNs, the e-commerce platforms, the web publishing software. They are used to host the malicious payloads. We have the data, and we have streamlined communication platforms to send it. We need to recruit them into the fight. So that does it for our content. We did get an interesting question that I want to throw at you guys. I know we're a little over time, but with mobile app advertising, who would be responsible for serving on an app that enables piracy but promotes itself as a game? Would the App Store be responsible, or the developer, or the DSP? My initial thought is everybody. Everybody plays a role there, right? I mean, I don't, how would you guys approach that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of like who can shut it down or solve it the fastest if nobody wants to be a part of that. I mean, in a lot of states, if you get too drunk at a bar and you leave and you crash a car, you're obviously responsible for crashing your car, but the bartender is responsible for overserving you. And I think so, in a similar situation, the App Store, it has rules against those types of things, and it needs to be responsible for monitoring those apps and pulling them down. But I think DSP should also be understanding what kind of inventory it's buying and what's on its inventory, because it represents its advertiser clients that are there. So it needs to be just as responsible, because it's the one getting paid for that. So I think it's kind of a shared, to your point, shared responsibility. And who can shut it down the fastest, right? Like, when is it? Who needs to shut it down? Who has the policies that says this isn't allowed, and who can get it stopped? I think is obviously the thing. I think if we just point fingers and it keeps running, I don't know if that helps anybody. Definitely doesn't help the advertiser. Definitely doesn't help the ecosystem. So whoever can shut it down first should try.
Yeah, I think the DSP and the App Store should be working together on that kind of stuff. And because, as you said it really doesn't help the advertiser. In the end, you're doing them a disservice.